Assalamu Alaikum everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you to another session of Ask Dr. Saleem. In this series, we take your questions, whether they're about Quran, hadith, or general Islamic questions, and we pose them to Dr. Saleem. Questions will be taken in the order that they're received, unless we have a bunch of raised hands, and chat questions, and then we'll be going back and forth between those in groups. However, we'll be taking one question per participant. If there is a quick follow-up, we can take that. Otherwise, you'll have to raise your hand again for the second round of questions, and you can pose your questions in either English or Urdu, depending on your language of preference. Answers will be given in English unless specified otherwise. And so with that, we'll start off with our first question of the day. This one asks, Ghamidi Saab's view is that namaz has been transmitted by ijma', and he also says that the first raf' al-yadayn to begin the namaz is a must, but I've heard that there's a sect in Oman that prays without even their first raf' al-yadayn. So why is this so despite the ijma'?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, you need to point out who are these people who pray without raising their hands in the first instance. Let me know who they are, and then I can let you know, because I haven't heard of this sect at any occasion or at any time. And remember also that when a very vast majority of people, generation to generation, starts doing something from the Prophet, then only if there is this religious innovation that can creep up can be something that can justify, or can be something that you can interpret in this way. Otherwise, all that we can say is that these people started this off, not because the Prophet did so, but because it was their own opinion. So that is what we call as innovation also. So I would need the exact contours and details of these people. And secondly, if there are such people, then I can tell you that all of them, about them we can clearly say that whatever they have done cannot be reliably traced back to the Prophet. So you remember, when we say it's a generation to generation transfer, it doesn't mean that people cannot differ with it or have a different view. It only means that if people are having a different view, or at times practicing it differently, it means that they have come up with a different interpretation of something. Either that can be the case, or it has been an innovation that was started in time, and that can be traced back to the exact time where it started. So generation to generation transfer gives us certitude. Anything which is against this generation to generation transfer will not be entertained, and we will trace the history of this innovation, or we can, as I said, clearly see and point out that maybe at a certain point of time, people out of their own reasoning, whatever that might be, started or not started doing certain things. So you see, that will be tackled separately. But if something comes up against tawatur, against ijma, then that doesn't mean that it encompasses tawatur or ijma. It only means that it's going against it, and it can be traced back to a certain point of time where it must have started, which automatically tells us that it does not go reliably back to the Prophet.
So they're saying that this was the Ibadiyya sect in Oman.
Okay, so I have a visitor. So,
What
okay,
a beautiful
you can stay.
visitor.
Yeah, she was supposed not to climb, but now she is. Okay, go ahead.
So they're saying it's the Ibadi sect in Oman.
So as I said, the Ibadi sect, if they don't raise their hands in the first takbir, I can do some research work and maybe get back to you and let you know that this is something which is innovation on their part. It cannot be reliably traced back to the Prophet's ijma and tawatur.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, why did the Prophet Muhammad order for people to be beheaded? I understand that there's a need to kill opposers of Islam, but isn't beheading them too far? It's an act of dominance and humiliation, which I think goes against the Quranic directives.
You see, this is like interpreting things and stating them out of context. For example, if a person is a rapist, a person is the rebel who rebels against the state, what is our punishment? Our own state, do we not punish people severely for killing other people? Don't we counter them when they rape children and molest them? So you see, it all depends on the crimes. When we ourselves, in our own times, we allow people to be killed, if they kill other people, or if they are guilty of spreading disorder, anarchy. If this is something that we are doing, so why wouldn't the Prophet do the same thing? Because you see, humanity works in the same way. People commit certain heinous crimes for which they have to be checked. And the Sharia has told us that there are certain crimes for which the capital punishment can be given. So if this is something that was allowed to the Prophet and it is being allowed to us, I don't see any reason to criticize it. Usually what has happened is that people don't see that the crimes for which this punishment is given, what exactly were those crimes. So if you look at those crimes in the times of the Prophet, you'll find out they were mostly high treason. It was like rebelling against the state. It was like bringing people against the state, and at times it was that they had intentionally denied the Prophet of God, about whom they claimed that they were fully convinced of, and then they took to as active adversaries. So it all depends which context things take shape. We just cannot give a blanket statement.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Shams Suleiman. Please go ahead.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरा सवाल है कि मौलाना अमीन हसन इस्लाही ने ग्रुप्स में तकसीम किया है सूरतों को 7 ग्रुप्स में। तो अगर हम आज देखना चाहें तो उसके पीछे इस्तदलाल को या असूल को हम कैसे रखेंगे? और क्या गामदी साहब ने उन ग्रुप्स में से किसी एक ग्रुप में इख्तलाफ किया है? और इसी में एक छोटा-सा सवाल कि क्या इमाम फराही ने भी ग्रुप्स में तकसीम किया था?
You want me to give your answer in English or in Urdu?
आप इंग्लिश में दे दें।
So you see, let me start off in the reverse order. As far as Ustaz Farahi was concerned, he did divide the Quran, but he did divide them into 9 groups instead of 7. And as far as Ghamidi Sahib is concerned, he has not differed with his teacher, Islahi Sahib, regarding those 7 chapters or 7 groups. He also regards the same division. However, within the groups, he does differ with him regarding certain Meccan and Medinan surahs, and also the way the pairs are made. And also why certain surahs are singular, but overall scheme is exactly the same as his teacher is concerned. Now, as far as the first question is concerned, I was able to ask this question, in fact, with Islahi when he was alive. So we used to talk to him and ask him his questions. And it seems to me that, if I remember correctly, that this was way back in 1951 when he got jailed in a certain situation, and he got 2 years of his life spent behind the bars, and it was here that he set about translating the Quran, paragraphing it, and also rethinking his own teacher's division in 9 chapters. And he came up with these 7 chapters, and I think they are so scientifically explicable that every chapter starts with a Meccan surah and ends on a Medinan surah. So if you look at the sequence in the Quran, wherever your Medinan surahs are going to end, wherever they end, and they end in clusters, which means that there could be one or more than one Medinan surah. Right after that, you'll find Meccan surahs beginning either in clusters, in groups, I mean more than one, or there could be just one. So this clearly shows that there is a division which the Quran is following. Having said that, later on, I think that he got this corroboration from the Quran also. In Surah Hijr, where it is said, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِي وَالْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ. So he got this corroboration from the Quran as well, which says that we have divided this Quran into 7 chapters in which the surahs occur in pairs. So I think what he instinctively or intuitively reached as a conclusion many years ago, many decades ago, when he came to the tafsir of this Surah Hijr, that would be somewhere in the 1970s, he got this corroboration as well, that as far as the Quran is concerned, it itself says that it is divided into 7 chapters, such that each chapter has surahs in pairs.
Shams, you may ask your follow-up.
जी, मैंने ये भी पूछना था कि उस्ताद गामदी साहब ने मिज़ान में नबूवत के मरहले बयान किए हैं, दावत आमा, तो क्या वो भी इससे लिंक्ड हैं इन पेयर से?
Oh yes, very much. So he has explained this, and if you look at his Tafsir al-Bayan, he has explained this in the prelude to this, an introduction to the Tafsir also, that each of these chapters is divided into Meccan and Medinan surahs, and of course within the Meccan surahs, the phases of preaching of the Prophet are very apparent. So the phases of Inzar-Am, which is warning and enhanced warning, and then Itmam al-Hujjah, which means conclusive communication. So you'll find these 3 phases interspersed in each of these chapters. In the Medinan surahs also, you'll find the cleansing phase, the isolation phase, and then the phase in which the final verdict was announced. So they are also distinctly, you can see them distinctly arranged in this manner. This is one area in which he has developed a lot from his predecessor and Ustaz Amin Hassan Islahi, because although Islahi Sahib has also pointed out these phases, but Ghamidi Sahib has made them much more scientific by dividing the Meccan side of the Prophet's preaching into 4 stages: the warning phase, the enhanced warning phase, the Itmam al-Hujjah phase, and then the Hijrat phase, which means that this was the time that the Prophet would leave his nation. And these 4 phases or stages you can see in each of these chapters. I mean, it's not that they cover all these phases all the time, but at times they cover all these 4 stages. For example, if you look at this last group, which is the last chapter from Surah Mulk to Surah Nas, you'll find all the Meccan phases, all these phases interspersed and distinctly found. But in other chapters and other groups, you'll find them partly. I mean, at times the chapter itself begins with the warning, with the enhanced warning phase, which is the Inzar-e-Am phase. At times, it begins with the Itmam al-Hujjah phase. So this is something that he has developed further from his predecessors and teachers' study.
Omar, in the meantime, please go ahead.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब।
Walaikum assalam.
डॉक्टर साहब मेरा 2 छोटे क्वेश्चंस है। पहला ये तो अकॉर्डिंग टू मकतब फ़राई आप एक मुसलमान और गैर मुस्लिम की शादी को आप नहीं मानते, वो एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं है अकॉर्डिंग टू मकतब फ़राई। तो आप सीधा-सीधा ये भी क्यों इज़ाफ़ा नहीं करते कि कि जो पहले से जो मुसलमान एक मुस्लिम और गैर मुस्लिम जैसे कि जो भी हो मुशरिका हो, अहले किताब हो, जो भी शादी करता है हुआ है माज़ी में उनका वैलिड नहीं है। और मेरा दूसरा क्वेश्चन है कि ये जो फ्री विल है, ये अबू लहब के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में आप इसे कैसे जस्टिफाई करेंगे जो अल्लाह ताला ने पहले ही उसको सूरत नाज़िल करके ही उसको सील कर दिया कि अब अबू लहब ईमान नहीं लाएगा। अगर वो ईमान भी लाता फॉर द सेक ऑफ आर्ग्यूमेंट तो वो तो उसके यानी सारे लोग बोलते तो ये तो अंदर ही अंदर काफिर है, ये तो बाहर से सिर्फ कुरान को जुटलाने के लिए ईमान लाया है। तो ये नहीं।
Okay, let me answer your second question first. I hope I do remember the first one as well. But you see, the Meccan surahs, they don't say that this is something that has happened. It is like a prediction that has been made at the end of it's like the very end of the Meccan phase in which this prediction was made. So Surah Al-Lahab was revealed at the very end, near the Hijrat and Barat phase, which was the time when the Prophet was about to migrate to Medina. So this was like 12 years of his preaching that had gone unheard, and about him the Quran said, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. It's like a future prediction that is going to happen, and it is used in the past tense. It is mentioned in the past tense. We know that the Quran often mentions future events in the past tense to express their certitude. So it's not something that it was destined. It was something that he earned in 12 or 13 years of the ministry of the Prophet in Mecca, when the voice of the Prophet fell upon his ears, it fell upon his deaf ears, I would say. And so the Quran predicted that as a result of these 12 years, when he was clearly convinced that he is a true prophet of God, now very soon he is going to, he's going to be destroyed. Wamratuhu, with his that is something that his wife is also going to undertake. She's going to undergo punishment in the hereafter. But the words are tabbat yada abi lahabim wa tab. And yada abi lahabim actually refers to not to his physical hands, but to his companions and his associates. We very well know that this is what the Quran has used in Arabic language. The associates of people, they're also called as their hands and right hands. This is a very famous and a very common, I would say, idiom of the Arabic language. So that is something. It's not that it was predestined, as I said. He earned this, and when it was said, Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab, it means that the hands of Abu Lahab, which means his companions, which of course the Quraysh, the team of the Prophet, the nation of the Prophet, they'll be destroyed in future, and he himself will also be destroyed. So it was something of a future prediction that was revealed in Surah Abu Lahab. And I think I've forgotten your first question.
About the वो जो निकाह के बारे में अहले किताब या गैर मुस्लिम.
So I think you have been misinformed. It's not that the Farai school of thought in any way says that people cannot marry non-Muslims. I don't know where you heard this.
मैंने तो गहामदी साहब की बहुत से वीडियोस देखे हैं
No,
YouTube
there's
पे
no
जो
such
कह रहे
thing. I mean, the Quran clearly says that you can marry amongst the people of the book. Women of the people of the book can be married. All that he says is that it is recommended in the Quran that such marriages should take place in areas where Islam's traditions are dominant. And this is something that the context readily suggests, because this permission was given when it was nearly the end of the Prophet's ministry, and it was said, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum, that now that religion has been completed. And then it was said, Al-Yawma uhilla lakum at-tayyibat wa ta'amul lazina utul kitaba hillu lakum wa ta'amukum hillu lakum. And then it was said, Wal muhsanatu minal mu'minat min allazina utul kitab, that these pious women of the people of the book who have been kept chaste, now that Islam has become the dominant religion of the in the Arabian Peninsula, if you like to marry them, you're allowed to do so. Muhsinina ghayra musafihin, except that they should not be of lewd character, and they should not have paramours, and you should give them their dower. So this is something which is clearly mentioned in Surah Maida. I think you misunderstood Ghamidi Saab's stance.
Thank you, thank you. Sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Abrar, are you ready to ask? You're unmuted, but I still hear no audio. You might want to go into your settings and click on test speaker and microphone, and then try out your microphone from there. See if that helps. We'll come back to you. Baran Nashir, please go ahead, and please limit yourself to one question.
Assalamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Dr. Saleem.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My question is about the prayer, and I was wondering, because we are required to pray 5 times a day to get closer to God, to remember God, etc. And my question was certain aspects of the prayer, how the Prophet prayed, such as praying quietly during the daytime, and also the all additional voluntary prayers he prayed are, for me personally, very tough. But I've heard from my local imam that they are required to do. That's just how you pray, otherwise your prayer is not accepted. So I was wondering, what is the basis for this, and to get your insight on this.
I mean, are you talking about the fact that praying 5 times a day is something that you're finding difficult, or becoming punctual in praying 5 times a day, or have I heard you incorrectly?
No, not necessarily praying 5 times a day, but for example, doing all the additional sunnah prayers that the Prophet prayed every day, or
Yes,
praying silently.
I get you. Okay, so you see, as far as the mandatory prayers are concerned, they are just the ones that have been, that we pray behind an imam in a congregation, for example. So they are the only ones which are mandatory, which means that 2 rakat of Fajr, 4 of Zuhr, 4 of Asr, 3 of Maghrib, and 4 of Isha. That is what is the obligation all about. Anything that you do over and above that is optional, and it is going to earn you reward. And I think that because of the fact that the Hanafis, the who are in majority, it's their own interpretation of the Sharia, which according to which they think that the Sunnahs, especially the Muakkad Sunnahs, they think that we must pray them because the Prophet prayed them, and if we don't pray, then we'll be held accountable. So this is they are just one group of people who believe so. Otherwise, if you look at the Prophet's own the way he has described Salatul Maktuba, which means a mandatory prayer, and Salatul Tatawwu, which means the optional prayer, clearly it is just the faraiz, or the farz part of every namaz that is for which we are liable.
Does this also then include, for example, that during the Zuhr and Asr prayers you have to pray silently? Is this also
Yes, I mean
optional?
silently, or I mean, no. You see, if you're praying in congregation, you have to follow the imam. I mean, you follow the imam. The imam was going to recite loudly the Fajr, the Maghrib, and the Isha prayers. In that case, you just hear him. And when the imam is silent, which is in the Zuhr and the Asr prayer, then you read. However, when you're reading it, when you're offering the prayer at home, it's up to you. I mean, you can read all the 5 prayers silently, or maybe a little bit louder so that you can hear your own voice.
And if you are the imam yourself?
Yes, as I said, if you're the imam yourself, then, and if you're praying at home, for example, then you can just pray those 5 in a way that you hear your own voice, because that is something that can really be very beneficial in concentrating on the prayer as well. So, and it's up to you. You don't need to just recite louder. you can recite in your heart as well, and you can recite it little bit so that you can hear your own voice.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Nashad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Dr. I have one scholar of the Wahi school recently made a statement that the son of Noah was not saved because God in Surah Hud, I think ayat 46 says, Ya Nuhu innahu laysa min ahli, innahu amalun ghairu salih. Meaning that he was not the son of, not from the family of Noah, and that is why he perished along with the disbelievers. What is your opinion on that?
I would respectfully disagree with this, because when the Quran says "Innahu laysa min ahlik," it is not saying that he is not your biological son. What he's saying is he does not deserve to be called your son, because the very next verse tells us "Innahu amalun ghayru salih," that he is a person who is devil incarnate, who is someone who has those bad traits that he just cannot be deserved. He does not deserve to be called your son. So the Quran is not saying that he is not your biological son. All that it is saying is that what he has done, the way he has been brought, I mean, his own traits, his own evil deeds, they speak as if he does not deserve to be your son. So it's a style of the Quran in which it says so. Had it been a literal interpretation as a biological one, then the next verse, which says "Innahu amalun ghayru saleh," would not have been there. Because you see, what is being said here is that he does not deserve to be your son because of the fact that his deeds does not match the deeds of a prophet.
Sir, you have translated this saying that God said, Noah, he is not from your family.
Yes.
And then, of course, it goes on to say he is an extremely wretched person. But
Correct.
that scholar of the Farai school says, Innahu amalun ghairi salih, means that he was of not correct lineage, like. And he also fortifies his argument by saying that at some other place in the Quran it is mentioned that two women of my prophets, two women who are under my prophets, yani their wives, they betrayed the trust of their husbands. He
Correct.
fortifies it by saying that. Could you please add
No, actually,
anything?
that is near the end of Surah Tahrim, which says "Tahta." I mean, the verses are that they were the wives of these two respective prophets, and they disobeyed his trust, and therefore they did not deserve to be a part of the family of the prophets, respectively. So, I mean, that's a different case altogether. I mean, we first need to concentrate on this relevant verse of Surah Hud. It says, "Innahu laysa min ahlik," and which clearly says that he is someone who is not. I mean, literally, it would mean he's not your son. But clearly, from the next verse, we can tell us that he was someone who was his son, because there are other verses in the Quran in which Noah has asked his son that, Ya Bunayya, something to that effect, "Oh son of mine, why don't you climb this high mountain, and you will find yourself saved from this huge deluge and this storm." And he said, "No, I'm going to climb some high place and get myself saved." And Noah said, "Today, la asima alaykul yawm," something to that effect, which means that no one is going to stop you from God's punishment today. So I think if you look at other instances in the Quran also, in which this whole scene has been portrayed, you'll find that Noah is addressing him as son.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Just a quick follow-up question about the same question. Is it because of disobeying their trust through disbelief or cheating?
Regarding what?
Regarding the son.
I mean, the Quran said "Innahu amalun ghayru salih," which means that he is a person I mean, he's someone who's been called by the Quran as a person who is totally unrighteous, someone who has those bad traits. So that is what the Quran has told us. It's not elaborated what exactly he did, But all we can know is that he clearly recognized his father to be the prophet, and perhaps he did not regard him to be a prophet of God. That is the fate which his nation met. Other people of the nation of Noah met the same fate, that they recognized Noah as the prophet, but they denied him. So I think that it was no different from in the case of his son also, that he recognized him as the prophet of God, but he refused to believe in this.
Oh,
Sir,
he's
can I just come
asking
in?
about the prophet's wives.
Can I just come in that, sir? When you refer to Surah Tahrim, that the
Right.
wives of the prophets cheated upon their prophets, and I think Lot and Noah are mentioned.
Yes.
Uh, it is said that cheating on a husband would mean infidelity. That is what is being said by that scholar. I don't want to name him unnecessarily,
So I think
but
it was the word of Khanatahuma falam yughni anhumullah minallahi shay'a, something to that effect, these verses of Surah Tahrim. So
ji,
Fakhanatahuma means that they were dishonest with him. Now we
ji.
have to see in the context what exactly is the dishonesty. I don't think it was cheating. Dishonesty was that they did not go along with Noah regarding the message that he was preaching. The khiyana or the khanatahuma, as the words say, I need to consult that part of the Quran, but I think on my first reading, the word khanatahuma is not referring to any marital unfaithfulness on their part. It refers to not following the message of their respective husbands, in spite of being convinced about them.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Noshaba, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question is, if there is spotting before your periods for 3-4 days before, so can you pray or it's count as a period?
I think this is a very common question which ladies ask. I always refer them. I will always tell them that this is an area in which they need to consult a gynecologist and ask the gynecologist whether this spotting that they are having is part of their periods, or is it not part of their period in some extra blood, or it could be because of some ailment, some disease, and it could be some other thing that is explicable. So I think the best thing is to ask the gynecologist whether the spotting, what's the reason for the spotting. So if the reply is that it is part of the menstrual cycle, or it's part of the menstrual blood, then obviously prayers should be abstained from. However, if the gynecologist replies that this is not the menstrual blood and it has some other, some other reasoning behind it, then obviously a woman can go ahead and pray.
No, like my question is, like, if before the periods, just like 3-4 days you have a spotting and then you start a period.
So as I said, this does happen amongst women,
Okay.
that before their actual period, because of some ailment, they see some spotting. And on most occasions, our doctors tell us that this is not the menstrual blood, and it is related to some other ailment that a lady might have. And that is why I always recommend ladies to ask their gynecologist, because they are in the best position. Yes, on most occasions, they are allowed to pray because it's not the menstrual blood. On most occasions. But still, I think we should trust the words of a gynecologist or doctor, and then decide.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Rafia, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. Dr. Saleem, right now we see in the world a lot of cruelty, azmaish, killing. I just want to know that God is allowing this to happen, and this is a azmaish for everyone. But sometimes you just wonder, God can stop it. God, He can do anything He wants to. बट इतनी तकलीफें हैं, इतने लोग मारे जा रहे हैं, बेकसूर लोग मारे जा रहे हैं, बच्चे मारे जा रहे हैं, तो इसमें अल्लाह की क्या हिकमत हो सकती है?
You see, this is a very, very old philosophical question that has troubled many, many minds, still continuing to trouble them, that they are not being able to reconcile the misery of this world with the mercy of God. It's a very, very, it's an age-old question. From time immemorial, people are, confused with this very special thing, that how is it that God is merciful and He still allows miseries, and that too in such a horrific way. And it is by not understanding maybe the stance of the Quran that we find a very vast majority of Muslims today, they have taken to atheism, One of the biggest reasons for atheism is because of the fact that they are not able to understand these miseries, and they don't know how God can be called merciful and still allow these miseries to happen. Centuries ago, Buddha expounded something similar, and Buddhism itself has come into being because of this very notion that how can we navigate through life with such miseries, and the only way perhaps is to forsake the world and do some meditating exercises. And so Buddha embarked upon a very similar mission also. So I think the Quran has answered this in a very explicit way in on a couple of occasions, and said that these miseries and these adversities that you find, they are basically a means to try and test us, and God does not try and test a person at times beyond his own means. These trials and these tests are something regarding which we have to face the trial in a way that we don't give up. And when we behave in this way, that we don't give up, we still thank God, and we still go along in life, then the amount of compensation would be so huge in the hereafter that one will say that, well, this was nothing that I did. It was such a small thing that I had to suffer, and the compensation that I'm getting for that is phenomenal. It's beyond my imagination. So it's just a question of believing that these small miseries that we think are too huge today, they are going to feel like not even a drop of water in an ocean when we look at the compensation that we will get as a result of fighting these adversities in a positive way, in a way that we don't lose hope, and in a way that we always remain positive even in these trials. So it's just a question of that attitude that we need to tune into.
सब बच्चियां सुसाइड कमिट कर रही हैं, माँ बाप उनको टॉर्चर कर रहे हैं, तो जब हम अल्लाह को मर्सिफुल, काइंड सब कुछ कहते हैं, तो मैं मुझे सिर्फ ये होता है कि अल्लाह किसी तरह इन लोगों को रोक दे, ये जो कुछ कर रहे हैं, ये
So,
सवाल हो
see,
जाता है.
this is not God's practice. He gives people the choice to do whatever they would like to do. Had God been someone who would have interfered in the freedom of a person, then this would not have been the proper way to try people. So this is a question that the Quran has answered and has said that had God willed, He could have guided every person. I mean, every single person would have been on the right path. But then that would be his drive. It would be something that He has made compulsory out of His own will. So God says that I would not like to do something by forcing people upon it. I would like to give people the choice to do whatever they like. So if they are committing suicide, I mean, no one is forcing them to commit suicide, obviously. I mean, yes, circumstances become very, very horrific, and at times we even think that she might not have any other option, the girl who commits suicide. But as I said, this is something that between that person and God. But other than that, we have to understand that these trials that we are passing through, they are going to be a very, very tiny drop, maybe on the tip of a needle, we can say, in relation to the compensation that a person is going to get if he or she does not bow down before these trials and just not give up before these trials, and continues to fight along and say that I'm not going to give up, I'm going to just try my best. So you see, it is this will that we have to inculcate into people and tell them that however much the going gets tough, you have to fight it out, because you just cannot imagine the amount of reward that's going to reap. It's just a question of waiting for that and being patient.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया डॉक्टर साहब. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Muhammad Rasul, please go ahead.
Assalamu Alaikum. I want to know if you can hear my voice. So, I was listening to a Western scholar a few days ago, and he was making a very strong point which really hit my heart about the importance of hadith. He said that if we were only depend upon the Quran, then even if he was sitting across the table from an interviewer, and he picked up a pen, and he said that if I stole this pen from you, then according to the Quran, my hands should be cut. If we only read the Quran, but if we delve into the details of the hadith literature about the details of this law, then we would know that the Prophet has said that if the value of the thing that has been stolen is below a certain point, and also if it has not been hidden, if it is in plain view, or if it is returned, then the punishment keeps becoming smaller and smaller or negligible. And so that made a lot of sense to me what he was saying, and it somehow went against, like I've been following you people,
Right.
Group of people for like a better part of a decade now.
Mm.
It just seemed like making a very good point about that only the Quran cannot be followed, and this has to be part of how we see the religion. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, there are two things that I'd like to say. Had hadith been so important, the Prophet would have encouraged every person to convey whatever he has said to the rest of humanity. He never ever did so. It was people out of his own sweet will who did so. This is not my main argument. The main argument is that the Quran is sufficient because a sariq is not someone whose hands are to be amputated if they pick up a pen or pinch some money. The word sariq means a person who is a thief, who has to be classified in the sense that he has committed a theft, which can be classified as a theft in which he was doing something and he was stealing something, and that was a substantial amount of thing that he stole, and he had no option. I mean, he was guilty of it. He deserved no lenience either in his own situation or in the circumstances that he was passing through. So remember, the Quran never said allazi yasriq, that a person who commits theft. The Quran has never said that. The Quran said as-sariqu was-sariqatu faqta'u aydiyahuma. The person who is a thief, who is a classified thief, the word sariq is an adjective and the word yasriq is a verb. Had the verb been used, this interpretation could have been possible. The verb has not been used. An adjective is being used. When do we use an adjective? You use an adjective when something becomes a trait of a person. I can call a thief when he can be classified a thief. You see, an act of theft is something else, and being a thief is something else. So I think it's just a question of reflecting deep on the Quran, and this is precisely what the Farai school has done, and it has explained that this is not the right way to proceed by thinking that the Hadith has given us these options. The Quran itself has given us these options by telling us that the word that the Quran has used is not a verb; it's an adjective, and an adjective qualifies a person for this particular punishment when that theft is of substantial amount, when it is planned, when it is done in a way in which a thief operates. So I think that all that you need to do is reflect deeply on the Quran, and you'll get the answer.
Thank you very much.
So, if I can very quickly, have a follow up on this, sir. I understand what
Yes.
you were saying.
Okay.
Obviously, you are a very learned scholar, and what you are doing is very intelligent interpolation that most people would miss if they were just to follow the Quran, and they did not have the capacity or the years and years of learning to delve deep into the meaning of the intended meaning of even one word. I'm saying so. Sorry, sir. So this is my confusion about this.
So that is why I'm saying that, you see, when you read the verse of amputation, you need to look it up, and you'll find scholars like Ghamidi Sahab, like Islahi Sahab, like Farai Sahab telling us that this saraka that you are being warned of, or it is something which warrants this punishment, is not something in which a person pinches of some money. It cannot be regarded as the saraka which the Quran has warranted for an amputation of hand, because the word sarik has been used. You see, a common person, when he looks up something, he needs to. If the question comes to his mind, as I said, then he has to look up people who have scholarly interpreted this verse. Otherwise, of course, this could be a misinterpretation. So remember, verses in which you have a question in your mind. For example, this question, if someone says that, well, in the absence of hadith, how could we have not done so? We would have definitely gone on and cut the hands of someone who would have just pinched, maybe a wife pinching some money from the wallet of her husband would have warranted the same punishment. So you see, these questions can arise, but then you have to discuss these questions with people who know, and then it becomes clarified. Otherwise, you see, every person can make up his own mind interpreting a Quranic verse, and without discussing and asking the relevant questions, he or she can reach a conclusion. So that would not be the right way to study the Quran, especially in verses which relate to the Sharia. You need to delve deeper, and as a common person, you must consult scholars and tafsirs for a proper explanation of these verses.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We have our question from Abrar. He asks, In the Quran, Prophet Ibrahim broke the idols and said, "Why do you worship something that can't even speak?" And then Prophet Ibrahim is making a qualification that God should be able to talk. But then a simple question comes up: if Allah doesn't talk to us directly, how is He different from those idols?
Because you see here, the thing is that he destroyed the idols, and he wanted them to let them know that if they cannot even defend themselves and utter a word, how can you call them to be God? So it's not a question of speaking or not speaking. It's basically a question of telling them that they are defenseless. Our God, the God of this universe and mankind, we just cannot see him, nor can we ever have this duel with him. So in that case, in the case of Abraham, he was looking at those idols or those statues or whatever they were, and when he shattered them to pieces, he wanted them to realize that they are defenseless and they are not even able to speak. The words speech is like just adding insult to injury. Basically, what is being said here is that if I destroy them, they cannot even defend themselves. So how can they be God?
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. We'll take another chat question and return back to the raised hands. This one asks, I'm doing a screenwriting class for extra credits, and we're doing a philosophical writing. And one of the character has an extreme God complex and actively challenges God. He says some really dark stuff like matchless in his malice, God entertains himself, or matchless in his irony, God condemns that man to hell. I will be closely involved in the script, and so I will have to write this character's dialogue as well as a dialogue as well that actively demonizes and insults God. If I engage in the script making process while disagreeing with it, would I still be committing a sin? Another thing is that this play has an ambiguous ending, so it doesn't actually condemn the character's views.
So you are effectively the script writer, and you are just conveying a dialogue of someone, maybe in real or in imagination, who is condemning God or whatever, whatever language that he's using. And if that is the case, then you're not liable to any sin, because you see, you're not doing something yourself, you're just portraying someone. And if that someone has actually the same view as you portraying it, or maybe he's acting as a devil's advocate, so that is not something that's going to be counted against you. I mean, it's not your view. What you're doing is you're projecting someone else's view, if I've understood correctly.
They've left the meeting, so if they're listening to this, please, if you want further clarification, do ask. We'll move on to our next question. Muhammad Qasim, please go ahead.
Assalamu Alaikum. सर, एक प्रिंसिपल सेक्योर्ड फाइनेंसिंग का मामला था जहाँ पे 3% मंथली प्रॉफिट को फिक्स किया गया था, और ये भी तय हुआ था कि जब फाइनेंसियर या बोरोवर दोनों में से कोई भी इस मामले को कैंसिल करेगा, ख़त्म करेगा, तो 3 महीने के अंदर पैसा रिटर्न करना होगा, और ये 3 महीने का प्रॉफिट भी नहीं जुड़ेगा। बोरोवर ने कहा था कि वो अपने ज़मीन को बेचकर पैसा दे देगा अगर पैसा ज़ाय हो गया या फिर फंस गया कहीं पे, लेकिन 3 महीने में दे देगा। अब हुआ ये कि फाइनेंसर ने ये मामला को ख़त्म किया, तो 3 महीने तक उसने प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट वापस नहीं किया, 6 महीने तक वापस नहीं किया। तो फाइनेंसर ने वो 3% तो पहले कैलकुलेट नहीं करना था, लेकिन बाद में एज अ फाइन कैलकुलेट करना स्टार्ट किया। अब 20 महीने के बाद सर, प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट को छोड़कर 10 लाख रुपए लगभग फाइन अमाउंट हो गया है। अगर वो 3 महीना या 6 महीना का 1.5 या 3 लाख छोड़ भी दे, तो भी 7-8 लाख रुपए फाइन अमाउंट बचता है। तो सवाल ये है कि फाइनेंसर को ये फाइन अमाउंट लेना चाहिए, नहीं लेना चाहिए, या फिर इसको मामले को किस तरह से हल होना चाहिए, क्योंकि आगे कब मिलेगा पैसा ये भी कोई ठीक नहीं है।
I think if you can just write down the details, because you've been very fast in your question, I need to reflect a little bit on what you've said. Please send me the question on my WhatsApp or whatever is convenient. I'll need to go over these details slowly, and then I'll reply to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Asif, please go ahead.
Yes. As per your understanding, sense of profits means Allah keep them error-free in matters of the capture of Wahi and its transmission to his addresses, and in case of the last prophet to the rest of the mankind. Right. That means in case of the last prophet, transmission of the Wahi, that's Quran and Sunnah, to the later generations was the responsibility of the Sahaba. in the first instance, and then later the other Muslims in the subsequent generations. But we know Allah gave no such immunity of being error-free in terms of transmission, and before transmission, even capturing of Wahi and its subsequent transmission of the religion, then how can we confidently say that the Wahi was transmitted error-free in its original and pure form to us? In the context, no doubt, the prophets are error-free in terms of capturing of the Wahi, but its further capturing and its further transmission by the Sahaba and the to the later generations, because they were humans and they didn't have this immunity. How we can say that this was transmitted error-free in its original and pure form to us?
You see, these are two different things, entirely different things. When we say the prophets of God are infallible, it means that they do not add or subtract to the Wahi or the revelation that they get and then transfer to the whoever the companions are. I mean, talk about Jesus, he had just 12 disciples. Talk about Noah, he had a very few of even less than 12. So if you look at all the prophets of God, the infallibility is not regarding transmission. That comes later. It actually relates to the fact that what they receive from God, it's not tampered with. They transmit whatever they receive from God. The next step is the transmission, and that transmission in the case of the last prophet was made error-free because a whole generation of people would transmit. Let us talk about the text of the Quran, which is one form of transmission. So that text of the Quran was transmitted not by 1, 2, or 5 or 10 people, but by the whole generation of the Sahaba, and those who were not its memorizers, they could vouch for the fact that whoever have memorized the Quran the way they have memorized it, either in part or in whole, is the Quran that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad. So see, the immunity is regarding the nature of that transmission, and that nature of transmission is called tawatur, and everyone acknowledges the fact that whenever something is transmitted through tawatur, which means perpetual concurrence, then the transmission is error-free. The closest example to this is the language. For example, languages are transmitted through perpetual concurrence. So whenever they were coined until the time of their coinage till today, you'll find that the words and sentences have been transmitted through perpetual concurrence, because the words have remained the same, the meanings have remained the same, and even if a word had a different meaning, that has been captured. And later on, we know that lexicons and dictionaries have even recorded these meanings. Otherwise, just as a language has been transmitted en masse, which means a whole generation of people transmitting the meaning and words in the same way. So similar was the case with the Quran, that it was transmitted orally and in the form of writing by such a large number of people that the immunity that it had was not of any interpretive nature. It's not that they were interpreting the Quran and maybe then transmitting it. They were just transmitting the text of the Quran. The differences have arisen in the interpretation. Otherwise, the text of the Quran has the same immunity because of its nature of transmission.
One clarity further I would need, as regards, as you know, the infallibility of the prophets, as you mentioned, that is in terms of he exactly gets what is being revealed to him. I mean, this much is sure, and there is no question of any fallibility in this regard. But I mean, this situation is also confronted with when the Sahaba gets that Wahi from the Prophet. In the first instance, that is from the God by the Prophet. So it's agreed, it's error free, it's infallibility. But by the Sahaba, I mean by the rest of the mankind, from the Prophet, how can we ascertain that this capturing is exactly what is
So I've answered the
what
same
was given
question.
by the
Look at the Prophet standing at the top of the tree. If you construct a pyramid, you place him at the top of that pyramid. He's not transmitting the Quran or the text of the Wahi to 5 or 6 people. He's standing there and he's transmitting it to 80 or 90,000 people in front of him. That was the amount, that was the number of people that he gave the last sermon of Hajj. And the estimate is between 80,000 to 1,20,000. So let us suppose that 70 or 80,000 people heard the same text of the Quran from him in the 5 daily prayers, while educating, while discussing, and then those 80 or 90,000 people transmitted the same text to the next generation, which was expanding. So that is why we have a pyramid. So for each pyramid, the number of people were increasing. But in the very first rung of that pyramid, there was such a large number of people present to grasp that text of the Quran that they were transmitting the same text. There was not a single difference in the transmission, which actually renders that transmission as infallible. So the nature of transmission, when a whole generation transmits something, is such that we obtain certitude in it. So as I said, it's the agency, the way that was transmitted. The Prophet standing at the top of the pyramid and then transmitting it to the whole generation, and that whole generation then transmitting it to the next generation, which was of course more than the previous generation, and that is why the pyramid keeps on expanding.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from Rabia Jamil. Please go ahead.
I want to ask about the behavioral manifestation of the word rebirth. By definition, it does mean saying something ill in the absence of someone, so they would dislike it if they had heard it. So my question is, if somebody actually does wrong to us and if we share it with any of our friends or mother or anyone, so out of hurt or out of worry, so would that be also counted as rebirth?
You see, backbiting, which is proscribed in the Quran, it means that you discuss the flaws of someone in that person's absentia. That's just one part, with the intention of humiliating or disgracing that person. That is what backbiting is. Now, if you're discussing the flaws of someone, maybe because you're assessing that person, maybe you're assessing the person, I'm just giving you a general idea. Yeah, that assessment could be if a proposal has come and you would like to assess the person. It could be because you are being offered a job and you'd like to know who the person is who's hiring you, etc. You would like to know his whereabouts or her whereabouts. You see, when the purpose is not to disgrace that person and humiliate that person in absentia, that cannot be called as backbiting. Backbiting means that you are discussing the flaws of someone when he is not there to defend himself or herself in absentia, and the purpose is to humiliate that person. So the intention of humiliation has to be there in discussing the flaws of someone in absentia to qualify it as backbiting.
Sometimes we do it out of anger or
Yes, sometimes we do it out of anger, and that anger, of course, needs to be controlled.
so
Then,
we
and
actually want
we
to
should not do
humiliate.
that. As I said, I mean, I have given you the definition. If you're not disgracing someone, if you're not humiliating someone, and if you're doing it for any other reason, it could be justified for some reason or the other. The only thing is that you should not do it out of malice, out of humiliation, out of disgrace.
Thank you so much.
Related to the topic of backbiting, we have another question in the chat, so I'll take that quickly. What if you're just saying something to vent about something that's happened and that paints someone in a negative light? Does that count as backbiting too?
Well, you see, in this regard, the Quran has given us a very lofty standard. I would not say it's incorrect, because you see, at times you need to vent your emotions, and the purpose is that it's just that you are not able to do anything else. In that case, I would say the example that has been set in the Quran is by Prophet Jacob, who, you know, when he was divested from his son Joseph, and he had repeatedly been being shown dishonesty by his children, his sons. He said, "Innama ashku basi wa huzni ilallah," that my complaints and my sorrows, God, I'm just going to present before you. I'm not going to discuss it with anyone else, because I need to vent my emotions, and I'm just going to present my petition to you. I might cry in front of you, but I'm not going to talk to anyone else. So, I mean, this is the standard which has been set by the Quran. So, I think if any one of us has these pent up emotions in ourselves because we are angry or because we are extremely disappointed, then this is the right way to do. Anything less than this, of course, is something that you can always do, but we have to try to come up to the standard and think that if we have been wrongly, we are wrongly accused of something, or maybe there's something that we cannot do, or we are helpless of, or someone has done something that has really caused us distress, then the ideal way is to talk to God and talk it out with God, I would say.
Thank you very much for that answer, Dr. Saleem. Naseem, please go ahead.
जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब। मेरा सवाल थोड़ा
अच्छा।
लंबा है, मेरा ख्याल अगले सेशन में हम कर लेंगे। ज़कात और मॉडर्न टैक्स सिस्टम के बारे में, फिर रेट्स के बारे में। मेरा ख्याल ये 5-4 मिनट रह गए हैं, तो
So
शायद
I think that there is a lecture that I have given on this issue, Zakat. Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamadi's view on Zakat. There is a whole, I think, a long lecture in which people had a lot of questions, and it explains his complete view. I think Mariam will give you the link. You'll find it on our YouTube channel as well. If you could go through it, I do think it might answer most of your questions. Otherwise, of course, you're most welcome.
गांधी साहब का मैं सुन चुका हूँ सारा, उनका जो उन्होंने
No,
जो प्रोडक्शन थे
it's not his lecture. It's my lecture on his view. I have explained every bits and piece and every small detail. Uh, I have tried to do so. So you might find it useful.
So YouTube पे ये है अवेलेबल आपका?
Yes,
Zakat,
I
the
think
modular
maybe.
course? Is that the
No,
series?
it's a one-off lecture.
Okay, then okay. Thank you. Jazakallah.
Thank you very much. Sophie, please go ahead.
Alaikum Sir. Actually, I just want to know very briefly about some confusion in Quran and Hadith. Very, very briefly, two things. Number one is in Quran, which are some looks like against the basic teaching of Islam or concept of Islam. Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam is mentioned in Quran that when God has given them power, a lot of powers, which not given to anybody else, but he himself prayed that God don't give it to after me anybody, which I'm confused at why the prophet can say like that, that don't give to things other people, common person can do that, but I mean how the prophet can say like that. And the second thing, very very briefly, doctor, says, in authentic hadith there is said that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam given for 50 namaz and then talked to the Musa Alaihi Salam and they said go to 40 and 30 like this reduce. But in Quran, and Ghamidi Sahib also mentioned that 5 times namaz is from Adam Alaihi Salam. So how it happened that Rasulullah we got 50 and then go back to 5 namaz? So these two confusion, please, if you can.
So as far as your first question is concerned, I mean, this is something that I was also. It took me a lot of time to understand this, but the thing is that this is a way of expressing the fact that God, I have done something wrong. Remember, it was something wrong that he had committed. We don't know what exactly was that, but he repented for that, and he said that now I have realized this. Now you please give me a dominion or a kingdom which no one else has ever done. It's like telling God or asking God that God, a person who has repented before you in such a manner, I would request you that my repentance and my tawbah with you should make me a person should deserve what I would like not anyone to receive. So it's just like a gesture of humility on his part, in which he is trying to ask God that I mean, it is your mercy to give to someone who has done something so grave and repented from that gravity of that, of that incident, that you should make an example out of it. That when a person goes so deep in his repentance, then he deserves something very great out of your compassion. So it's something like this. So it's like telling God, I mean, asking God, of course, that I have done something grave, and please make this an example that I have repented so deeply from that grave sin that I did, that I would like you to give me something which unparalleled, so that it becomes clear to people that what repentance can do, what repentance can achieve, when deep repentance can achieve actually.
Okay.
Thank you very
And
much.
I would also like you to look up this verse. I think it's from Surah Swad, if I remember correctly, or Surah Safat. You look at the tafseers of Ustaz Ghamidi and Ustaz Islahi. They have tried to explain this as well. What I've just tried to summarize.
And what about the namaz? 50, 50 namaz and then.
Yes. So that the second part of your question. So you see, this was something that took place in a vision. Remember, it was not something that was done physically. That God asked. I mean, God being asked for 50, and then he say, and then he telling him that, well, you should go back and reduce these prayers, and then ultimately they were left with 5. So remember, this is something that took place in a roya, as the Quran says, which means it was a dream in which the prophet was shown this. So basically, dreams are not to be meant to be interpreted literally. So the implication was that such is the nature of remembering God, that we should do it all the while, every time that we remember that we have faltered. So remembering God is like a perpetual thing. However, formally we have been allowed to do so 5 times a day. Otherwise, such is the nature of God's remembrance, is so all encompassing that we should be remembering God at every single instant. And this is something which like symbolically tells us that we are praying 50 times a day. So that is a symbolism which tells us that we should be remembering God on all occasions, but formally on 5 occasions. So
But
that is how.
generally it's considered that from since time of Adam alayhi salam always 5, but this is
They were
just
5.
yeah.
So
Okay.
they were, as I said, you see, this 50 is not something that took place literally. This was a dream which the Prophet saw actually. It was a vision, it was a dream, as if he was going to the Almighty and having
To pray
the
all
prayer
the
to.
time, yeah. To remember
Yes,
him all the time. Thank you.
yes, that is something of a dream. It's not something that happened physically or literally.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for all your answers. And thanks to all the participants for coming through. Inshallah, we'll see you all tomorrow in another session of textual study of the Quran. Until then, Assalamu Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.